Thank you so much for joining me, David. Welcome. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for having me.
I honestly, and I don't even mean this as a joke. I don't know if I should refer to you as doctor or not because I don't want to be disrespectful because you earned a doctorate. So,
Well, when we met, I had not. So let's just refer back to our starting point.
okay. I would rather refer to you as you want to be referred. So I want to respect that. But I really thank you for joining me today. How are you? How's everything going?
Everything is going well. I am in a lovely budget hotel room in Akron, Ohio, preparing for Akronomicon tomorrow with a quick appearance down here. And all is well. How are you?
I am all right. You said Acronomicon?
Yeah, Akronomicon. It's
That's
it's
that's
a
clever.
one. It is. It's pretty clever. It's pretty clever. So it's just a fun little horror centric uh, pop culture show in
That, that,
beautiful Akron, Ohio, or
that
Cuyahoga Falls,
oh, that's
Ohio.
awesome. That's awesome. And you said it's a one day show. I love
It
that.
is.
I
Yeah, those are
appreciate
great.
that. I absolutely appreciate that. So we'll just start rolling into it.
Sure.
What made you fall in love with writing?
Oh my gosh. Um, no one's ever asked me that before. This is odd. I I don't know if I don't know if I'm in love with writing or if I'm in love with storytelling.
Okay, that's fair.
Because I love storytelling, regardless of medium. And even in the criminal work, it's figuring out stories, right? And putting answers to stories. So I love storytelling. I think I've always loved storytelling. And as a kid, I believe it was probably a little escapist. For most of us, we're creating worlds that we have control over with a distinct lack of control over anything else around us. And from there, I was, and also like the rest of us, I think I'm just filling gaps in things that I'd like to see that don't exist. So, from that sense, whether it's a film or, I just started to get into creating music and a book or a comic book. I think the act of storytelling is the first love.
That's all, and I can absolutely appreciate that because I drew as a kid and then kind of fell away from it, and that's why I kind of like fool around with movies and everything else is
Mhm.
yeah the same kind of thing is that I the passion just kind of to tell those stories. So I can absolutely understand that. So that's awesome. What were the first stories that you were telling then?
So my mom kept I did a haunted house story where a young boy, and I was probably 8, I think, and it was one of those things where it was bound with yarn because that's what they did at school in the
Yeah.
80s. And oh, this gosh, that would have been the 70s. Whew. The late 1900s, as I like to point out. And it was a haunted house stories about monsters. I'd always loved monsters. I was a monster kid from way back. The Channel 50, movies and Count Scary and the Ghoul and all those wonderful things that we ran into. I was always a Wolfman fan. And so the story centered around a young boy having to escape a haunted house with a bunch of monsters. And at the end of it, he gets food. So I think that's kind of encapsulated my entire life, like,
Which can I
monsters and
tell you?
food.
Can I tell you the irony of you saying that is because I like put something out last year and it was like this, blah blah blah, and it ended with the kid going to get a burger, and it was in honor of like his grandmother who had died in the book stuff. And I sat and when I was going through it, I'm like, this for as heavy and dark as this gets, to end it right there just doesn't seem like I earned that. So I'm like, I'm gonna change that.
But that's how it worked though, wasn't it? When I was a kid, if everything terrible happened, food was the band-aid. If something great happened, food was the celebration. So it was this it's in I have this so the I have the world's greatest we have McDonald's at home story. When I was small, 7 years old, McDonald's, and I'm very old, like we just determined, used to have a sale on hamburgers, and they would be 19 cents each. and they were 19-cent hamburgers. And my mom would go in, she would save up for months and buy like 100 hamburgers and then freeze them.
Holy
And
cow.
so we had like terribly like rebaked. This is pre-microwave, rebaked McDonald's hamburgers for months afterwards. So I always had McDonald's at home, which was sort of a flex, grade school flex, but they tasted horrible.
Now, who were you reading as a kid? Like, what were you, drawn to?
So, as a young kid, we didn't have Goosebumps. We didn't have any of those wonderful things. So we kind of had to like start heavy. I around 10 discovered Stephen King. And so I was reading Stephen King around 10. I got into Mary Shelley, Frankenstein. I read Dracula 11 and 12. So I was kind of like the classic goth stuff. Lovecraft I didn't hit until I was older. But I was fortunate to grow up at a time at 10, 11, 12 years old when grocery stores had shelves full of lurid and disgusting horror novels that should not be read. So, and my mom didn't care what I read as long as I was reading. So, I was picking up Guy and Smith, The Crabs, and I to this day I recognize covers that I see, but I vaguely remember the books themselves. Um, I just watched again the movie Nightwing about the bats, and I vividly remember reading the Martin Cruz book when I was like 9, 10 years old. Things that I really shouldn't, I had no idea, I had no business reading. But the thing that stuck with me the most, I read the novelization of Toby Hooper's Funhouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Gene
and that
Coon.
was it was Kuntz, yeah, but at the time it was Owen West, and because hey, we didn't know who Kuntz was at that time. This is the preface, and I couldn't hear the name Gunther. I couldn't see the movie. I wasn't allowed to see the movie. I just read the book. I couldn't hear the name Gunther without shivering. I was that terrified from the book.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's cool. Was it now the book's a little different, isn't it? If memory serves, I think it was supposed to be a little different.
I haven't read the book in a long time, but I do remember being disappointed in the movie because I'd read the book first. And I'm probably the only person ever that read the novel Funhouse before seeing the movie.
That's interesting. Now, as an author, is there a genre your type of story you're drawn to more than others?
Yeah, I work in horror a lot, thriller. Nonfiction wise, it's a little easier. I write in the crime world, of course, professionally, and then in exploitation film. Those are kind of like my nonfiction things. As a fiction near, I think that I probably gravitate more toward um, like a horror satire. Things that have like a social conscience but are wrapped up in the most icky, gooeyest, disgusting things. So you may not see the message, but when you get the message, you're like, oh, why'd he do it like that? So,
That's great. And now, is it hard to kind of change gears in writing different, for different kind of under different tense, we'll say?
no, not re- I mean, I don't find it difficult. It's really, it's at this point, it's a job. So, I write for the day job. I write for the side hustle job, like the fiction. I write at work. I write when I'm not at work. I write for people. So really, the idea of honing the craft of writing is, I think equally as important as the content as well. So it's like a builder that has no problem going from a supermarket to a large house to, a warehouse. The same basic concepts are going to apply. It's just a matter of being able to change content for audiences and approaches. And so I think that's, as much a craft and a skill set as, welding or karate or baking or anything.
Okay, so I remember what I wanted to ask you. So when was or was there something that happened that made you kind of step back and say, "Oh, I'm a writer. This is what I do now."
Oh man. I think so. I don't think there was a this is a what I do now thing, but there was a this is what I want to do sort of thing. I had can we swear? Are we
Sure.
allowed?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, good, good. Because I inadvertently swear and I'm going to swear during this. I know I will. Um so I was in Michigan State and I was in my sophomore year, I believe. And one of my still very good friends, Alan Sagish, was my roommate. And I had taken a creative writing class and I'd never done anything like that before. And I wrote a story for the class. And it was, it was a genre story because I love genre, but it's just filled with tropes and Twilight Zone ripoff. It was not a good story. But he's like, "Hey, let me read it." And so I hand it to him, and we're like, 20-ish years old and it's probably mainly drunk and high for most of the time anyway. So he reads it and he looks up at me and with like dead seriousness, he's like, "This shit's not that bad." And so from that point forward, that was like really the first time anything I'd ever made had gotten a positive review, you know. Utter disappointment at home most of the time. Not doing anything right, drinking my way through in undergrad when I'm not supposed to be, a non-spectacular high school career, and someone who I really respected and loved said, "Yeah, well, it's not bad." And so I think that was that moment there. And then I just kind of fell in love with the with not so much the process of it, but the end result of it. I don't think I'm a fan of the typing and the crafting and the revising. But I understand it's a necessary evil because I really like the end result and the book release and the showing the people and seeing people read it or like when the film premieres. Although in the process of filmmaking I am a fan of the process too. um, but I think the solitary alone time of the writing, I'm far happier with a finished product than I am with the process getting to a finished product.
That's absolutely fair. Now you've seen some of your work adapted to film. What's
Mhm.
that been like?
Um, Almost to a project disappointing.
Okay. I
I
I
mean,
know
to be fair with it.
I can absolutely understand. I had someone adapt something of mine, and it's lovely what they did with it, but it deviates so much from what it was that I'm just like, it is what it is.
Right. Right. And so, and like a couple of times, I mean, it's my fault sometimes. So if I like, I'm not really counting screenplays because if you write a screenplay, you're kind of like mapping out the film anyway. But everything that I've ever been involved with, at a certain level, you're dealing with, uh, budget and you're dealing with time and you're dealing with having to make decisions. I mean, I think that independent film is akin to like community theater sometimes, where you don't have a lot of money. You've got six choir robes and four actors that don't fit in them, and you got to make it work somehow. So you're going to change your story, not necessarily the theme of your story, but you're going to change the drapes out in the room to get the point across. And so I think, having to do that over and over and over again. Oh, like one of the, most prescient examples in my head is I love Hammer vampire movies. Love them. I like the castles and the capes, and I like Universal as well. But Hammer was just lush, and it was filled with color. And Christopher Lee was so menacing, and so I wrote a movie called Vampageddon, which I wrote it like it is a Hammer horror movie stuck in the middle of early 2000s Phoenix. Like was a bright thing to do? Probably not. But when it gets translated to screen, because they spent 42 cents on it, you know, things happen and stuff changes. And, I got my capes and my suits, but that's about all I got out of it. And so, and there's just, things happened that in that particular film, the sound guy got stoned every day and forgot to run sound. So the entire thing is ADR. It's additional dialogue. You come in and you're recording with non-pros. it happens, and to me, it happens every time. I would say the my favorite adaptation is probably the Rotten Tail movie. It deviates greatly from the book, but I got to have a hand in the deviation. So, we got to blow it up ourselves, which was nice.
That's cool. Is there one of your books or something you've written that you would love to see adapted? I mean, assuming the right way, but adapted.
I would love to see a filmed version of Cannibal Fat Camp, but I don't think the world's ready for a filmed version of Cannibal Fat Camp. It's like it would be like a 90-minute remember that orgy scene from It that never gets translated to film? It'd be like 90 minutes of that.
So it's the end of society?
It could be. It could be one of those things. It hits the right tones and then suddenly the earth cracks. And yeah, it could happen.
Oh, hilarious. Now you do a lot of conventions and kind of appearances and stuff. What's that like for you?
I do a lot less than I used to, which is interesting. When I was really heavy into the comic world, so like when we were starting Source Point Press and we started getting on the national tour, it was a few times a month. We were hitting a weekend or the week-long things. I've gotten old. I've slowed down. I don't do as many comics, but I enjoy it. I'm kind of picky now about what I do. We talked about a one-day show. One-day shows are perfect. I don't want to. I've spent the week in New York and signed things the entire time. It's grating. And it's also incredibly expensive for the publishers, and it gets expensive for me as well. So I like things like Acronomicon. I love it. I love doing your shows because you come in and you talk to a bunch of fun people and you have a wonderful time, and then you get to go home and sleep in your own bed. So I am officially in the curmudgeon land of appearances. And yeah, one day, and if it's a 2 day, that's got to be really kind of local because I'm over it.
No, it's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. So like you've been involved in film and writing stuff, and now I discovered I hadn't learned of this, but I discovered it, and you've mentioned it a little bit. Like you're involved in some ways with music.
Yeah, so we're all fans of the Lords of October, and I have had this bucket list punk album in my head for like 40 years. And I'm a huge Misfits fan, always have been. Misfits. I was fortunate enough to do like a Calabrese music video, so that whole genre was something that I was really into. And I decided that like I'm over 50 now, 60's coming fast. I got to get this done. And so I talked to Paul and Dave from the Lords of October, and I'm like, "Hey, can you help me make this happen?" And they're like, "Yeah, we can totally help you make this happen." So we're currently working on some things and getting some tracks laid down. And as a vocalist, I am not good, but I don't have to be because
I
this
say
is for
you picked the
me.
right genre. So
I can, well, yeah, I can screw up and fall forward. Yeah, I could fail in one direction.
I mean but I mean, truly though, that is it's kind of like indie filmmaking is that people are willing to forgive so much just because they appreciate the passion behind it and the fire that they don't need, necessarily the art of it and the craft.
Right.
So I could see
Yeah.
that.
So we're calling me as a solo artist, Dr. Cujo. Cujo is an old college nickname, and of course it's the right tone. And I was kind of shooting for that whole, horror movie host vibe. And so yeah, the first track we just finished is a that I'll share with you, but don't show anyone yet because it's not that good, is a cover of the Ramones' Pet Cemetery, except it's an acoustic duet like Extremes More Than Words. So things that shouldn't exist but do is kind of my calling card.
A romantic pet cemetery. I love it.
It's a little romantic-y. Yeah.
Um, because of snafus on my side, I'm gonna lose you soon. So what I feel like, I have one last question I want to ask you, but I
Yeah,
feel like all this does is set it up so you have to come back so we can get into your criminology
I will totally come back.
stuff. So because I don't want to just ask a question and just leave you on a cliff. So people out there that are getting involved in writing or working on comics or films or any you can pick one or all of them. How what would your advice be? Like what should they do to kind of get more serious about it?
Simply do it. I mean, it's super easy to talk about writing a story, and it's super easy to talk about making a movie, and it's super easy to talk about making an album. But if you're going to do it, just do it. Write that story, and maybe you're going to have a friend that says this shit ain't that bad. Or, maybe you have a friend that says this is freaking terrible, and you can go back and fix things. But either way, you can work with something. You can't work with nothing. So, get out there and do the thing. Write a short story. If you want to, if you can't draw, make friends with artists. Where there's this is so cliche, but where there is a will, there's a way. And if you're driven to tell stories, simply tell the stories in whatever manner is available to you. If you want to do comics, but you're having trouble, um, for example, getting artists and you can't afford these, write a book. You know, it's these are transferable skills across mediums, and I think that telling the story is the most important part. So just do it.
Awesome. Now how can people track you down? Like,
Yeah.
what are you on?
So I am on the Facebooks and the Blue Skies and the LinkedIn's, usually under Abnormal ENT. It's my old production company, Abnormal Entertainment. But you can get to everything through davidchayes.com, which is the entertainment side of things, and then hayescriminology.com, which is the day job stuff.
Ah, amazing. And I can't thank you enough for joining me and I really look forward to kind of digging into your criminology stuff because I think that's going to be a great conversation and I'm really excited. I hope you have a great time at Economicon this weekend.
Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great time sitting wherever you're going to be.
Woo!
I didn't find
Thank
going
you,
to
David.
be.